You're listening to Hockey Talk on the Rock
All right, stop.
with Laura and Keith.
It's interesting.
So let's back up a second.
He played absolutely out of his mind.
It made no sense to me.
And now, here are your hosts.
So here we are, episode 28, Hockey Talk on the Rock. Friday, April the 16th, all day long. Bit of a short week for us because we did our sweet little impromptu trade episode on Monday, but there was plenty of news this week and there was some re-signings and we're going to cover it all. So where we want to talk Canucks COVID, or what are you thinking, Laura?
I think sure we can start with the Canucks COVID situation because it seems to be the main, storyline for Canucks fans right now. The situation keeps changing. I guess the big thing was the Canucks were meant to play tonight and tomorrow night, which I think everyone agrees is pretty ridiculous when you have, basically your whole team that's had this virus and they haven't necessarily had any time to practice. They had one practice and they were going to play back-to-backs against Edmonton, so two of the best players in the world there, and then Toronto is the best team in the division. And it took JT Miller, basically saying, look, I don't feel ready and I didn't get this virus. And so I'm worried about my teammates. And I think that it's kind of ridiculous what the league is asking us to do. And then evidently what happened is there was physical testing for the players, and most of them that had COVID failed those physical tests. And then the NHL was like, okay, we won't make you play this back to back. So they bumped the game. They canceled the two games. Well, not canceled. They postponed them, I guess. So now the Canucks are playing Toronto on Sunday and Toronto again on Tuesday, which is better than what they had before. But there's still a lot of kind of up in the air over who's going to be playing. The thing that I just read today, the number one thing, I guess, is that one of the two goalies is still not feeling great. So there's a possibility that Mikey DiPietro could get into a game. And that's obviously a bit alarming because he hasn't played any sort of competitive game in 400 days. It's been over a year. So again, this is kind of on the management, because you failed to get yourself that backup goalie that you needed in this situation if you came to it, but also to get DiPietro some games in Utica, which we talked about before. And it does just kind of bug me. Again, I think the Canucks in general, everyone knows that you can't expect them to be competitive coming out of this because, again, I haven't even gotten to the other people they've called up yet, but you don't know who's going to be dressing for them, and they're playing some pretty good teams, so it could be pretty ugly, and I think everyone kind of accepts that right now. But the last time Mikey DiPietro had to play a game, he got absolutely shelled because of a kind of similar situation, obviously not the same, but it was against San Jose and they just kind of left him out to dry. And it would suck to see his development stunt because you keep kind of throwing him to the wolves, and then obviously the whole not playing.
I'll hop in with a couple quick things.
Sure.
So I want to point out quickly, I don't think you mentioned it, but maybe you did because I'm distracted, that the Canucks are dealing with the P1 variant strain as well.
Yeah.
Because I know that there was, other markets that were kind of our team went through this more or less, and they didn't, but I think the big thing to stress here is the variants do seem to affect younger people more severely. And I think that's why this, like you said, the physicals weren't getting passed and everything like that. It's same but different,
Yep.
And then,
sorry.
And my other point I just want to quickly bring up is trying to be silver lining with this. I feel like there'll be teams, not every night, but there'll be nights where, and it will be affected by who's in the lineup, where the other teams in the North Division will take the Canucks lightly, and that will benefit them.
Yeah, I'm actually wondering, when they were going to play Edmonton tonight, I thought maybe there would be a chance that Edmonton would sit McDavid or Draisaitl. Because for them, what's the point of them playing? They've got a heavy lead in the points race if you care about that as a player, right? But really, what's the point of them trying like playing these guys if they're gonna get hurt? But
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see who comes up and who gets in the lineup too, because again, trying to be silver lining, if there's teams that take them lightly on some nights because they have a lot of AHLers or guys making their debuts, it might give those guys an opportunity to actually kind of show some stuff off rather than just get totally pinned down in their own zone kind of thing.
yeah, and I know like for example on defense they've called up all of Rathbone, Sautner, and Rafferty. So to me, if you're calling up those three guys, there's a likelihood that at least one of them is going to play. And it will be interesting to see. Like Rathbone has had a very good season in Utica. It'll be interesting to see what he's got. I have a feeling he's probably not NHL ready, but you know, this is a chance for him to show what he's got. So that one's interesting for me. And kind of my last thing really about the COVID stuff with the Canucks. I have a couple, it's probably going to go on longer, but one of the things that's been talked about now is because the coaches also got it right. And I was going to just say Alain Vigneault. Travis Green is still showing symptoms, or he's still not 100%. So there's a chance he might not be behind the bench tomorrow night. And the rumor that I heard specifically about Green and the coaching staff that aren't signed for next year is they were like kind of okay with not being signed for next year, but then this virus hit and there still hasn't been talks with them, and they're pissed off because they're like, why are we having to deal with this and we don't even have any job security. So that was an interesting storyline to follow. If there's any truth to it.
Yeah, no, I think I think I agree with you 100% that, under normal circumstances, not having a contract, whatever, but these aren't normal. And now that going through this, like if the management knows that they want them and these are their guys and they're waiting for financial clarity in the summer, I think that because of this, they should be able to make that sacrifice and go,
Yeah.
financial clarity or not, these are our guys and we're gonna have to pay them. And they just went through hell.
And
but
like
we know the owners are special and have a mind of their own. So
yeah, and kind of on that note, like with the Canucks, I'm really interested in what's going on, like from players to management right now, because I don't know if you heard like Bo Horvat's comments today when he
I
was
did.
talking, and yeah, he basically said like someone asked like, "Oh, how is management supporting you through this?" And he didn't say anything about management. He literally just said like fans and teammates. And I
And
thought,
family and friends, yeah.
so I don't know. There's something clearly wrong with this organization that we've known for a while, and I don't know. I feel like if we want to get into the Gaudette stuff, like to me, it kind of ties into that. Like, so at first, like okay, so at first when the trade happened, there's obviously all the rumors that they traded him because he was the first person to get COVID on the team.
And that was my initial reaction. And I threw it out to you half jokingly, and you were like, no way.
So I didn't think so because there was two reasons. So the first was because they talked about trading him since like February or whatever. And I do think that they really like this Matthew Highmore. And I think that part of it was because he was available and they went out and they're like, okay, we're going to get this guy we've liked for a while and we want to get rid of Adam Gaudette. But I think the reason why they want to get rid of Gaudette more than the COVID thing, but I'll get back to that in a second, was because of his RFA rights, because in the last few years you saw Hutton, you saw Stetcher just walk because they didn't qualify them. And I think Jim knew that he didn't want to qualify Adam Gaudette and he wanted to get something for him, so he traded him. That's like my initial gut reaction. But the more stuff that has come out about this COVID stuff, I actually think there might be some more to it. I think it might be partially because of that. And I do think that there's a prioritization about bringing people into this organization that Horvat likes. And I think that is part of the reason why Pearson stayed, is because they're good friends. And I don't know how well those two got along. And if there is some sort of inner clickiness in the Canucks. But I'm wondering if maybe there's some sort of gap between like the younger players, because I know like Pedersen and Gaudette like play games online together and stuff. So I assume they're okay. But maybe there is some sort of line, Horvat's 26 now or whatever. some sort of maturity thing, and then the COVID situation was like the last straw, and then they're like, okay, we got to get rid of him.
Yeah, no, I agree. It sounds like to me, if I had to formulate a like, hey Keith, tell me exactly what happened, I would say, they were ready to move on for a while. They were looking for the right move, and this just kind of was like sped things up for them.
Yeah.
And I do think it's something to do with the room. Um, Apparently, from what I heard, there's a lot of Adam Gaudette feels like he deserves a bigger role,
Yeah.
but won't commit to the two-way play.
Yeah.
I think there was a little bit of I think Adam Gaudette didn't fit with the guys in the room, and I don't think he fit with the people running the team. So yeah, and then the final thing I want to say is the fact that he's an RFA next year, I think they weren't going to re-sign him or qualify him because they, like you saw this year, they moved him to the wing, still wasn't really working out, and get something for nothing. And I think you told me earlier this week that Ben liked Highmore 4 years ago or something.
Yeah.
So it's not surprising that he would target a guy like that.
Yeah, and I think too, like, I had a thought and now I kind of lost it. So with Gaudette, like with Jim Benning's comments, like about how, oh, we wanted him to take a step forward this year and then he was just okay. Like, if I was Gaudette, I'd be super pissed off and I would keep that and I would frame it and I'd put it on my wall and be like, every time I play the Canucks, I'm gonna like just have a game for myself. But the kind of more important thing about it, like, again, I don't really know, like, Gaudette has had his moments. He had a good season last year and he wasn't great this year and he wasn't great in the bubble, right? I think the Canucks moving on from it is fine, but the problem that I see with this team is now you've put yourself in a situation where not only do you have to re-sign Pettersson and Hughes, which they say they've allocated like 13 to 15 million for whatever, but now you have to find a third line center, because unless you're going to re-sign Brandon Sutter, which I have another thought about, you don't have anyone to play that role, because that was what you envisioned Adam Gaudette to do. So unless like Cole Lind can come in and play third line center for the Canucks, which I don't know if he can, you're gonna have to sign someone, and that's a scary signing for Jim Benning.
So I heard Brandon Sutter is willing to come back on a 1-year deal on the cheap.
I think they're gonna keep Brandon Sutter, and I think Jim Benning showed his hand when he said that he knew he wasn't gonna sign Jordy Ben, and that's why he traded him. Because I think if he knew he wasn't gonna re-sign Sutter, then he would have just moved him. Even though, like, I know there's all the family stuff and the COVID stuff that he talked about, but I do think if he knew that he wasn't coming back, he would have tried to move him. So I think
Okay, because when he was talking on the one interview he did, he said something about like, I think he was asked, was there any other moves that you think he could have got for pending pending free agents or whatever? And he didn't name a name or whatever, but he said, I went and talked to one guy, because there was a move that could be made, but based on everything going on, he didn't really want it. And I kind of feel like that might have been a Sutter.
I agree. I think it probably was Sutter. But yeah, I don't know. I just get the feeling that if they hadn't had conversations, he would have been gone. But anyway, it's just a gut feeling. And if Brandon Sutter comes back for cheap, I mean, it's not the end of the world. But I do feel like there are better people out there that you could have targeted. And by trading Gaudette, you've now kind of forced your hand, essentially. But I don't think Gaudette's a center anyway in the league. I think he's a winger. So we'll see what he does in Chicago. But that was an interesting situation, I guess.
He's reuniting with his university teammate too, isn't he, Dylan Sakura?
Yeah. And I feel like, those US players are probably happier playing in the US, so maybe it's better for him. And also, I think Chicago, like, the system they play is less structured, and I kind of think he'll fit in well there, like better there than he would have here. So we'll see. Anyway, he could be, it could be another like Hunter Shinkaruk deal where everyone freaks out and then he doesn't amount to anything. So I'm trying not to overreact. I did like his game, but I don't think he had a future in Vancouver. So
I believe for a while in him, but his finish was so inconsistent. That was what got me for a guy who was known for scoring goals.
Yeah. And kind of like switching from one trade situation to the other, I kind of want to just talk a little bit more about the Taylor Hall thing.
Okay.
Is kind of the rumor that I heard was, and we talked about this a bit last time, that Hall really wanted to go to Boston. And I actually think that he probably told the Sabres that he was only willing to go to Boston. And I think they might have been able to get something more for him, but they knew he wouldn't waive. So
There were some rumors about Kevin Adams approaching the situation too early and
okay.
having multiple teams, but once Hall knew Boston was one of the teams, he kind of controlled the situation from there. And I think Kevin Adams will lose his job or learn from that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they can fire him yet, right? They just hired him, so I think he'll get at least a year, but it's Buffalo, so who knows?
Yeah, I mean, they just hired Jason Carmanos to come in as his assistant GM, so I feel like they're bringing him in as kind of like a little bit of a support buffer.
Yeah, and I don't know, I just thought it was one of those situations where, I think if it was Hall for a second, you would have I don't know, thought, okay, that's pretty bad. But then throwing in Lazar for Bjork or whatever, I actually think for Boston, Lazar will probably be an upgrade. I know that Bjork scored for Buffalo the other day, so I think that part of it is also interesting to me. But I also heard the reason why they had to take basically Bjork back was because they didn't have enough players and they literally just needed a body to come in and play. But again, that raises the question to me is, why did you trade Curtis Lazar?
Yeah, Lazar's an odd one because he was a high draft pick who couldn't find his game in Ottawa or Calgary, or wherever he just went from Buffalo.
I think he was better in Buffalo. He put up a few points, but yeah, anyway, I don't know.
Yeah, his greatest hockey memory for people might be when he ate the hamburger straight off the ice. You remember that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't really have much to touch on Taylor Hall. He scored. He's on a better team. Obviously, surround him with better players, he'll play better.
Yeah, I just think basically all I was trying to say is I think they got a bit stuck there, and the reason why they got stuck though was because they gave him the no trade, which they didn't have to do, right? I think they didn't give him the no trade. They probably would have done better at the deadline, but you gave him the no trade, so you kind of screwed yourself over.
And I think that was by design for him. It was, I'm taking this 1-year deal to come play with you guys, but if it goes sideways, I want to have control where I go.
Yeah.
Hey, I just realized we're both wearing Arizona jerseys. That's a hilarious coincidence.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I have a reason for why I'm wearing Arizona, but I'll get to it.
I don't. I'm going back in my order, so funny convenience.
But yeah, other than that, I mean, there's a bunch of re-signings in the league. I guess we could talk about the waiver claims first because
I wouldn't mind. I liked a couple of them, so I want to I'll quickly lead off if you don't mind. I'll touch on Victor Mete getting claimed from the Habs by Ottawa.
Yeah.
I really like that move by Ottawa because you got a young defense for nothing. You got him from a rival. And I think he instantly comes in as their third best defense.
Something like that, yeah. It'll be good for him too.
It'll be good for him. He'll get more playing time. He'll fit in better with that young group they're trying to do what they're doing there.
Yeah.
I overall really like that move for Ottawa.
I don't really understand it from Montreal's point of view, to be honest, because I feel like they put Mete on waivers so they could trade for John Merrill and then eventually Gustafsson, but you wouldn't have had to trade for Gustafsson if you lost Mete, in my mind. So to me, you should have been able to move Mete. If you wanted to waive him, they must have thought he'd get through or something. But to me, that's a miss for Bergevin. He should have been able to get some sort of asset back for Victor Mete. So I agree. I think it's a really smart pickup for Ottawa, but I think it's a miss for Montreal.
Me too. Yeah. The other waiver one was he went to Dallas.
Vatanen, yeah.
That's the one. Do you want to take that one first?
Yeah, and so this is kind of similar. New Jersey waived Vatanen and or not New Jersey, sorry, Anaheim, right?
No, you're right, New Jersey.
Am I right? Because didn't they trade Vatanen for Palmieri?
Yeah, years ago.
And now are they both back on the same team?
Yeah, and Vatanen went to New Jersey.
Well, okay, I'm out of it. It's okay.
Vatanen went to New Jersey for Henrique in that deal.
Okay, yeah. Right. Either way, it was a bad. I was gonna say it was a bad deal for New Jersey because he wasn't the same player when he came back. Like Henrique was a lot better than Vatanen. Anyway, they waived him. He's going to Dallas. I feel like it's a smart pickup for Dallas. He hasn't been as good as I said in New Jersey as he was in Anaheim and then in New Jersey before. But I think that like Dallas is a better team defensively, hopefully. Their problem is scoring goals. So I think Vatanen like helps them out. I don't know if he'll play regularly in their lineup, but he's a good piece and they got him for nothing. So
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I don't like the move as much as the Mete claim, but I think it was a good move for Dallas for a depth guy who can add some points in for them.
yeah, for sure. So yeah, then there was a bunch of re-signings that happened right around the trade deadline up till today. So I mean the first one I'll let you take away was your Flyers re-signed Scott Lawton, and I know you're a big fan of this move.
I am, and you know what? It's funny because it's like the trickle effect. You know, there's player agents around the league that are probably high-fiving and being like, "Yeah, Jim Benning, Tanner Pearson deal," right? Because after the Tanner Pearson deal dropped, how many deals have there been for guys for multi-year deals right around that $3 million mark, right?
Yeah.
So I was worried they were going to trade him because I like him as a player. Like he contributes offensively. He's a really hard working player, probably the hardest working player on the team.
Yeah.
And he just seems to fit in really well with the group as that third line center. So being that this year is kind of like, and from everything I've heard, it sounds like upper management and the staff, like coaching staff and everything like that, are willing to just accept and admit that this year is a write-off and, chalk it up to the circumstances of the world or whatever, and they're not going to try to do anything too knee-jerky.
Yeah.
Which is really good. So it makes me feel like Vigneault's going to be safe going into next year, which I like. And yeah, Scott Lawton for 5 years at $3 million. I mean, hit with 32 at the end of the deal.
Yeah.
But I think for at least the first 3 years of the deal, that'll be good value for them.
Yeah, and I know like listening to Elliot Friedman talk about him, the repeated story I heard about him was that he really liked being a Flyer. And so I feel like it is important to keep those guys around, like it's kind of like a Chris Tanev in Vancouver where, they really like being part of one organization. Why move him on, especially when right now he's still in his prime and he plays a pretty good game for that role. So smart move by them. The next one I have here, it was the Kings re-signing Alex Iafallo. He's had a good season. I'm gonna look at what the term is on that because I actually forget.
I'm pretty sure it was 4x4.
Was it 4x4? Yeah. So the only thing I can say about this is it's almost like the anti-Detroit move. So like IFL has been good. I know he was undrafted and he's basically like kind of come out of nowhere here to have a pretty good season. He was pretty good last year too, I think. But the only thing I can say is like you're signing a player for multiple years that's probably going to be older when your other players are coming into their prime. And you could have probably gotten some picks. Well, you could have definitely gotten picks for him at the deadline. I think he would have been pretty sought after. So because they have so many young forwards coming up, it kind of confuses me, that move, but good for him. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have much to say because I know he's having a good year this year, but beyond that, I haven't really paid attention to LA the last few years. So
yeah,
27, 4 years, not bad term, 4 million, maybe a bit steep because of the Tanner Pearson deal, maybe.
Yeah. Maybe. I mean, again, like I'd probably rather have Alex Iafallo right now than Tanner Pearson, but I don't know. I don't know if he repeats this level. And yeah, I just think if you're trying to open up roster spots for your young guys, eventually it's kind of a confusing deal. But
yeah, I want to quickly hop back because I did hear that the Scott Laughton deal came together after the Pearson deal because the Flyers were trying to keep it below 3.
Oh,
But
okay.
then after the Pearson deal came out, they went to 3.
There you go. Yeah. Um,
Anyway,
it's all good. The next one, so there's 2 ones that happened today, I believe, or maybe one of them was yesterday. I'm all confused on dates now. The first was that Connor Sherry re-signed with the Capitals. He's been having a pretty good year with the Caps, so I'm not that surprised by that move. And I think that's also a direct, like, kind of reaction to them trading away the Ponick deal. So they now had cap space to sign Connor Sherry. So
what was the deal that he signed? I actually missed that one.
um 2 years. Let's see the numbers. 3 mil. So the same as Pearson, but for 1 last year. So I think that's
Wow.
pretty good for them.
Good for Sherry, for someone who's kind of looking for a job at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, but I think he's fit in well with that team, and I it makes sense for the Capitals. I mean, I don't know how much longer they're going to be competitive for, right? It seems like it's got to be close to the end. But if they can keep it going for a couple more years here, then signing makes sense. And then the last signing that I really like is the Jets re-signed Adam Lowry. And, on my kind of bucket list wish of people who would join the Canucks this offseason, I did have Adam Lowry on there because I thought he'd be like a really good depth player for the Canucks. But he's having a really good season with Winnipeg, and he re-signed with them for
5 years at 3.25.
yeah, so I mean it's long for an Adam Lowry type player, but I think it makes sense. Again, he fits with their system really well, and he's a good depth forward. So I think
Yep. Another guy who pointed to that Tanner Pearson contract was like, that one. I want that.
I want that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good for him though. A little long on the term, I think. Same with the Laughton deal, but
Yep.
short term, good deal.
Short term good deal, and I do think again they probably like Lowry probably looked at Scott Laughton for his deal too there.
Yeah.
I have a couple kind of injury things to talk about. So the first one is going back to Buffalo. I don't think anyone is surprised by this news, but Eichel is now officially out for the season, which is kind of crazy when you consider that when this injury happened, Ralph Krueger was like, "Oh, he's not injured," and then he was, and then he's gone. So he had a herniated disc in his neck, and he's done for the year. But it's probably good for him. I don't think he wants to come back to play. And I kind of doubt he goes back to play for Buffalo. I think he's probably gone after the season. The other one that's kind of on the same lane, thought train as that, is Pedersen. So he saw a specialist this week, and now they're saying his return is even further away, and I highly doubt he returns this season. Now, at this point, I think that's going to be the next move. And then the other one is Stamkos. So Stamkos in Tampa is now out for at least until the week before the end of the season. So what will be interesting to watch with Tampa is if they now try to bring back Kucherov, because if Stamkos is on LTIR, then they could probably make it work with the money. So we'll see what happens with Tampa. I think that will be an interesting one to watch too.
I think they're going to try to activate Kucherov. I mean, I know he makes $1 million more on the cap than Stamkos, but if
They'll
they
figure out a way, they always do.
yeah, and they'll get him. That's ideal for them to get Kucherov into the game before the playoffs. So
yeah, it almost works out for them, right? And again, they have the depth. They can. Well, they're definitely making the playoffs. There's no way in that division that they don't. So there's that. And then kind of my last bit of, I guess, news from around the league, which isn't really the league, is the Memorial Cup is now officially canceled, which sucks for scouts. And the OHL season is also either canceled or highly in doubt. I can't remember one of the others. So those are 2 things that scouts, again, won't be getting to look at players. So it's too bad. I do feel really sorry for just those players in junior right now, because it's been a pretty awful 2 years, and I can't imagine how your development's going to be. And it's going to be really fascinating to watch how quickly some of these players are, NHL ready. Because normally you have a couple that come up and play in the NHL right away. I kind of doubt they will next year. But it'll be interesting to see like how much longer they take than normal.
Yeah, I wonder how much of the dynamic of like benefiting from ELCs immediately after drafting players is going to throw things off for a couple of years.
Yeah. And kind of on that note too, the ELCs, like Toronto just signed their Russian prospect Radim Amirov to an entry-level contract starting next year, and it's highly anticipated the Canucks are going to do the same thing with Podkolzin. So that's some kind of positive news for the Canucks because they'll have him next year. But yeah, I think that's my overview news in the NHL.
I saw one thing that I want to throw past you just for hilarity's sake. Is I saw a thing saying today that the Florida Panthers are averaging the second highest season attendance out of the whole league, and all the Canadian teams are tied for last.
Yeah, I saw that as well. I think that's a pretty good one. You'll never see that one again, so they can enjoy it. I guess the other thing we didn't talk about is Colorado, so they've now had 3 games postponed because of COVID. So it does seem like, even though it feels like, especially in the US, we're getting over these game cancellations, we might not be out of the woods yet for the NHL, especially again the Canadian division, but even in the States as well. And the Canucks, I will say too, their last game is now going to be on May 19th, which is like the last day of the Canucks, the league had allotted for games to go.
Right.
So we'll find it very interesting if there is another outbreak, like what they do.
Right.
So
fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. They're really playing with a fire now. I know like the Olympics are meant to happen this summer. I did read something yesterday that said Japan is rethinking it again. So if you don't have that pressure, then it doesn't matter, except for the fact you want to start in October and you want to give your players some sort of off season, but it doesn't matter as much if you're not competing for that viewership. So we'll see.
Did you see on the Olympic note? Did you see the unveiling of the Canadian, what they're going to be wearing?
It was a joke.
Did you see the American ones today?
The American ones are pretty bad too.
So I thought the Canada ones were bad until I saw the American ones, and I was like, okay, I think I would pick the Canadian ones pretty easily over those.
Yeah, for sure. Alrighty. Do you want to go into our 3 winners and 3 losers of the trade deadline overall?
Yeah, let's do that. And then after the winners losers, I just wanted to quickly touch on the Madison Bowie trade for Vancouver.
Oh yeah, I agree. Talk about that.
We'll pick that up after the 3. So do you want to do you want to go on 3 winners and I'll do 3 winners and then we'll.
Sure.
Okay,
so I have kind of 3. I cheated. I had 3 people that I think get honorable mentions here, or 3 teams. So they are Calgary, Chicago, and the Islanders. I feel like I liked what those 3 teams did overall, but they're not the best. I just like them. So I have Detroit kind of in my 3rd spot. I really feel like Steve Yzerman has a really solid plan and he's executing it to perfection. Anthony Mantha is a very good player. I think he fits really well with Washington, but I think he got back a big haul for him. And the John Merrill trade, he got more picks. He could have traded Glenn Denning and he could have traded one of his goalies, but it's okay. I still think he did a good job. Second, I have Columbus. Again, they had 2 people that they knew they had to trade and they got the most back that they could for both of them. I think they're really smart. And first, I have Toronto. I really like their moves. Again, just the recognition that this is probably the only time you're going to get kind of a clear shot to the final, or at least the semifinals, and just want to go all in. If they don't make it to the semifinals, then I think there's a big problem, but I like what they did.
Okay. I'm a little bit all over the map here because I definitely focused more on the losers, I think, by looking at the notes I made.
Yeah.
But for the winners, I've got Detroit as one of my 3. I didn't really rank them.
Yep.
But I thought they did a good job in the Mantha deal. I thought they got a decent return for John Merrill. I liked how they got the 4th round pick in the David Savard trade. They got a 4th round pick for Nemeth. So yeah, a lot of what you're saying about Stevie Y, and he's the man. Pretty much. Yeah, Tampa Bay just kind of fell in the middle of the pack. They weren't really my favorite.
Yeah.
Toronto was in my top three. They were like the definition of a team with a checklist to check off. This is what we want. And they went and got it. And hopefully they take advantage of it this year, because back to normal, it's going to be tough for them.
Yeah.
And then the last winner I had was, who did I have here? Well, I guess I'll just have to throw out Boston, I guess.
Yeah, I think Boston is definitely a team that did well.
I mean, they only made 2 deals, but they brought in 3 players in those deals. And
yeah, again, I have no problem with them being in there. I think they did a good job.
Okay, what do you got for? I mean, I'll give an honorable mention to Columbus.
Okay.
I feel like I got 2 honorable mentions. Sorry, I remember the other one. Columbus did good in their trades to get the first for Savard and Foligno, because in normal years I don't think they would have.
Yeah.
And then I want to give a little bit of love here to San Jose, actually.
Yeah, I think San Jose was smart. I agree.
Yeah, they were smart. They moved Dubnyk, who wasn't working, for a pick. They bought a 4th round pick from Toronto for carrying a little bit of money. They bought a 5th round pick from Vegas for carrying a little bit of money. It was more about what they were doing to get what they could, kind of thing.
Yeah, and you look at that team too, and they could have been like, oh, we're close to a playoff spot. We're going to try and buy, or we're not going to sell. And that would have been a mistake. And I really think they were smart with just, moving out the players that they did and then acquiring picks where they could. So.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that team can take on money also just really surprises me when you think about all the big contracts they've got. It's like, how are you getting this money? Anyway.
Yeah.
I agree. I think San Jose did well. You want to go to losers?
Yeah. Let's do it.
Okay, so I have honorable mentions again. I have honorable mention to Arizona, and I'll start with them a little bit because I feel like they're the opposite of San Jose here. They're in a playoff race because they play in a weak division. I don't think they make the playoffs in a regular year. They have no picks, and they have a crap ton of players who are on expiring deals that they could have moved to get something in return, and they didn't. So for me, I feel like that was a big miss, and they didn't really do anything. So they're a loser for me. The other kind of honorable mention is Carolina, because that division they play in is super tough. I really like Carolina as a team, but I feel like Tampa got better and Florida got better, but Carolina didn't, and that kind of will maybe play a role for them. And then I kind of cheated, so my top 3, the 3rd spot, I have Edmonton/Winnipeg, because I think they're kind of the same. Like, they both added kind of a depth, like physical defenseman, but they both could look at this year almost the same as Toronto and be like, hey, we got a really good shot. Like, before this trade deadline, I would have picked Winnipeg over Toronto to go to the semifinals. But now, to me, it's Toronto. And I feel like they could have gone all in, and they didn't. And same with Edmonton. Like, if you want to look at McDavid and Draisaitl and be like, hey, we're not doing anything, okay, but this might be their only shot. Again, they play in an easier division regularly, but like Winnipeg plays in the Central, right? So they have Colorado to normally compete with, and I just think that was a big miss for them. Anyway, speaking of Colorado, my second place loser is Colorado. I feel like they didn't do enough. Their goaltending situation with Dubnyk, I don't feel much better about than I did before. And they brought in one depth center. I don't know, one depth demon. I don't think they did enough for what they could do. And then first off, I have Buffalo, which I think is explainable.
Yeah. Okay. I'll start with my 3, because 2 of them are the same. Buffalo. I think they did what they had to do in terms of moving guys. They were just, I think people took advantage of an inexperienced GM in a tough spot.
Yeah.
So I don't think they got what they could have or should have. Then I had Colorado as well, because I think they brought in some players, but I feel like for what they're doing or what they're trying to do, they needed to bring in better players.
Right.
You okay? You all right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
They had the cap room too, so
Yeah.
yeah. And then I had a couple honorable mentions that I'll throw in afterwards, but by my third one would have been Florida, I think, because like you mentioned a bunch of times, they haven't won a playoff series since '96 when they went to the final, and they had some money crop up because of Ekblad, but they used it on Montour, and I think there was better players available. Maybe they didn't want to pay,
Yeah.
but then they paid a lot for Sam Bennett.
Yeah.
So then I questioned, like, well, they obviously really wanted to get him for his role he'll play in a playoff run. So why weren't they willing to pay on the defense? Where that's kind of where they needed the guy more.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree.
so I didn't really like their moves, but maybe it'll pay off for them.
I think
And
that
then,
Florida too, like they've said a couple times that they really want to be competitive for multiple years. So maybe they were freaked out about giving up too much. Like, but again, then it doesn't make sense for me with that Sam Bennett deal, although I guess you can argue he's still quite young.
right.
But yeah.
So, before I throw my two honorable mentions out there, the Arizona thing you were mentioning was I read that because of leading up to this season, there was such disarray with the upper management. With John Chayka and losing draft picks, and then they lost Taylor Hall for nothing. And they had really, really low expectations for this year. Like they traded Stepan, one of their veteran guys, for a second rounder, which was a good trade, but they wrote off this year before this year started. And because their guys have played so well and played themselves into a playoff race, they thought it would send an even worse message to what is probably not a great situation down there to the players if they're going to start selling off dudes while they're playing so well to try and make a run.
To me though, the problem is with that is you're a team that literally has like no draft picks. Like you've been finding your draft picks, you traded away your draft picks. So this year, like, they could have traded Brassard and gotten something for him. They could have traded like either Goligoski or Jalmerson, and someone would have picked one of those two guys up for a playoff run, like 100%. And to me, it's just like you're not recouping your assets then. So I get what you're saying, but to me, I still don't like what they did.
Oh, I agree. I think they should have sold assets for sure, but whatever.
No, they're a good team.
My two honorable mentions were basically for the lack of moves, and they were St. Louis and Minnesota.
Yeah.
I felt like those two teams, St. Louis more to secure that fourth spot because they've been struggling. They should have made some moves. And Minnesota's having such a good year. I mean, why mess with a good thing? I guess I kind of get that, but I feel like based on the year they're having, I probably would have tried to add something.
Yeah, I wonder if with Minnesota they just look and they see Colorado and Vegas and they don't think they can compete with those two teams in that division and they don't want to expend their future for that. But I agree with you. I think they could have done something.
Yeah, and I mean, Bill Guerin was on the radio a week or 2 weeks before the deadline, and like he brought up that they beat Colorado like 8-3, and then they had scored a bunch of goals against Colorado in recent games against them. So
yeah,
he's like, I don't know. As is, I feel like we can hang. So maybe they truly do believe in the group they have because he did do a lot of work in the offseason.
he did. It's true. There was a lot of changeover after last year.
So before we hit the Madison Bowie trade, the one thing I want to quickly talk up was the underrated trade of the year, I'll call it. And it was a pre-deadline trade. But I just wanted to throw a little bit of appreciation towards Alex Volkov since he's been traded to the Ducks from Tampa.
Yeah.
We talked about that trade and we talked about how that could be a good move for, different area. And I've seen his name on the score sheet quite a bit since he got to Anaheim. So good for him.
I'm like, if I'm a GM, I'm calling up Tampa and I'm saying, okay, who do you want to move? Like, besides, I guess, Tyler Johnson because of the cap hit. But, like, in this past, 2 weeks, that Ross Colton kid has scored, a bunch of goals. He came out of nowhere. Again, I feel like Volkov kind of it was a joke when he got moved, where I was like, yeah, he'll probably do well in Anaheim, and then he's been scoring. Like, their development system for Tampa is so good. It's so frustrating.
Yeah.
To me, like, just how they keep getting these guys, and then I mean, you do have to trade them because you can't have everyone. But I mean, look at Verhage, right? Like, they're all doing well. I mean,
Yeah.
Miller, Vancouver, like all these ex-Tampa guys. But
Yeah. So, anyways, just want to throw a little appreciation to that one because that was one of those we barely talked about moves, but it seems like it's paying off.
yeah, I agree. Alrighty, so the Canucks acquired another ex-Washington Capital, ex-Kelowna Rocket in Madison Bowie, or Bowie. I always forget how you say his name. But he is meant to be analytically not a very good defenseman, which is part of the reason why I wasn't very happy about this move. I feel like there was other defensemen that they could have acquired, but Banning seems to have some sort of fascination with that 2018 Stanley Cup winning Washington team. Or just ex Washington Capitals, I guess, if you throw in Schmidt. But it's okay. Like, they needed a defenseman to expose to Seattle, so he'll serve as that. We'll see pretty soon here what he's got, because I mean, his quarantine might almost be over by the time the Canucks play. It will basically be. I think he'll miss like 1 or 2 games, so
Yeah.
they'll need him, and hopefully he's better than I'm anticipating.
Yeah, same with me. It's kind of like they went down a round in the draft to get him, and it was probably to expose him in the expansion draft, but low risk move, I think, that could maybe turn out. But I heard one person be like, it feels like a Derek Pouliot type
Yeah.
acquisition. I was like, oh.
I think that's what everyone's fear is with him, and that's kind of what I've seen as well. Is the Derek Pouliot style, maybe Lucas Spiza style defenseman.
Right.
But he might be better, although I just have a hard time believing with the Canucks defensive system he will be better than I'm anticipating. But we'll see pretty quick here what he's got, and he's said that he wants to make this, kind of a long-term stop. So hopefully he's motivated, and yeah, I hope it works out better than I'm thinking it will.
Agreed. That was the last little nugget of note that I wanted to touch on for the week.
Sounds good. I think I'm done.
That's all you got? That was cool. A lot of stuff to cover. Like, I'm glad we did the trades and just kind of like, boom, winners and losers. And now we had this whole pretty much like 45 minutes to kind of go over everything else. So
yeah, it's been a busy week of hockey news, and hopefully this week, well, it sounds like we're going to get some Canucks hockey, so we'll see what they look like coming out of their COVID situation, and then we'll break it down again next week.
And we'll actually have 3 Canucks games, knock on wood, to talk about next Friday. Alrighty, well, Hockey Talk on the Rock, here we go. We're done episode 28, and we'll be back again next week. So go Canucks, go Flyers, and thanks for listening.
Woo.